Welcome everybody to another SimilarWeb webinar. We've prepared a very special session for you guys today, and we'll be discussing one of our most exciting and cool tools that we offer, our API. We'll also cover multiple use cases for the tool and how this will save you time, drive more efficient and profitable growth. I'm here also with Adam Lerner, my colleague here. He's originally from New York. Adam's actually been working in high tech for over 8 years. My name is Dan Hillier. I manage a team of in-house consultants, account managers here at SimilarWeb. For everybody, please use the chat for asking live questions throughout the webinar, and of course feel free also to reach out via email. It will be covering a few use cases, and at the end we will open up to questions from the audience. All right, great. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about how SimilarWeb collects our data. We collect our data using 4 primary ways. First is our panel. Second is our crawler. We also have ISP partnerships as well as direct measurement. So every day we see hundreds of millions of users using our multiple data sources, our panel, our learning set, ISP, and crawler, as I mentioned. And it's the unique combination of these 4 sources plus the algorithms that we apply to our estimations that make our data so accurate. Actually, in 58 countries, we collect more than 1% of the entire online population for that respective market. Great. So we actually offer a free version at SimilarWeb.com for anyone who's not aware. You can analyze any website or app on this website, and you'll get some high-level information learning about the app, how much traffic volume and traffic sources. And I want to now quickly talk about about some of the paid offerings that we have. We have the SimilarWeb Pro, which is sort of a much more powerful version of the free version where we have very, very granular level by specific markets for every website and app. We also offer this same data in a raw format of API integrations, which allow you to really analyze high volume and create your own algorithms. On the other side, we have raw data access, which is sort of our mass data that before we put any algorithms and estimations on it.
Hi guys, this is Adam here. I'm going to be taking over. Thanks Dan for the nice intro and overview of SimilarWeb. To start with, I want to first show an example of the Pro. Here we're looking at mobile app engagement metrics. We're looking at active app users. And you can see the Pro is, as you know, it's a very nice tool. It has a nice UI. It's meant for human consumption. The API, on the other hand, provides an output of data that isn't really meant for human consumption. This is a JSON output, which is a JavaScript notation. You can see, you can maybe kind of glean some information from this. It's not really effective to look at API raw data to get information. What you can do with this, however, is you can build a system that can convert this data into a usable format. You can think almost as the Pro as using this kind of data, but making it into a nice pretty interface with graphs. And this here is an example of a customized dashboard you could create just using API data. Again, we want to make sure that it's clear that the API is meant to be used and converted into another format. And the main benefit of the API is you can pull data on 1,000 websites in the course of a few minutes, whereas opposed to the Pro, you can maybe pull in like, I don't know, you can see 5 websites at a time or so. And that's the main strength of the API, to pull a lot of data in a short period of time. To start with, we're going to be looking at 5 different use cases on how to use the API. We're going to be starting with more simpler use cases and building up to the more complex use cases. To start with, we're going to look at how to qualify leads using the API. We're going to be looking at how to discover your competitors' business partnerships, targeting and segmenting API data, building a competitor dashboard, and competitor keyword analysis. Now the last 2 are a bit more complex, but we're going to build up to it. So the first use case we're looking at, we're going to be emulating a SaaS company which offers users a free demo. They have thousands of new signups every month, but they need to prioritize who they're going to contact. They don't have any kind of system in place, and instead of doing it at random, what we can do is we can take their existing data, which as you can see is standard for a lot of signups. You have the company, the first and last name, the email, and the website. And we're going to add SimilarWeb data to that. Now, in this particular case, I chose to look at total visits. It's always good to sort by visits, at least initially. If you want to target, if you have two websites to choose from who you're going to target, it's obviously better to target a website that has 7 million visits as opposed to a website that has 42,000, because chances are they have more money and there's a bigger chance of converting them into a paid customer. If you're also looking to target users or websites that have a lot of US traffic or UK traffic or Canadian traffic or any geo that's relevant to you, you can also pull that data and have another column that will give you that information. Another section, another endpoint or data point you can use is to pull by category. If, for example, you have SaaS software that sells on average for $5,000, but specifically news websites or shopping websites has an average purchase price of $10,000, you might want to filter out by that to say, okay, I see a news website with high volume, I want to target that first. And really there's no limit to the amount of endpoints or the different kinds of endpoints you can use. You can add bounce rate, average visit duration, a wide variety of endpoints. Specifically here I chose these.
So in this example, it looks like you're enriching data for about 10 leads or 10 companies, but using the API, how long, Adam, do you think it would take to, let's say, analyze like 100 or 1,000? Probably just a matter of seconds or...
Well, not seconds, a bit longer, but not very long. Like, just to give you an example, I pulled this information using an internal tool, which I'm going to show in a minute about how to use it, and I pulled information on 1,000 domains in probably 3 minutes, maybe less. So it's very quick to pull a lot of data. So just to recap what we did, we added SimilarWeb data to augment our available data. We sorted leads by the data points, and we prioritized who we're going to contact based on this new information that we got using SimilarWeb data. The next use case I want to look at is discovering our competitors' business partnerships. We're going to be using cheap tickets as an example. We're going to use them quite a bit in this presentation, so I hope you don't have anything against them. We're going to be emulating here a competitor of cheap tickets that want to target their referring traffic and focus on any referrer that has a high amount of mobile web traffic. We're going to pretend that we're a similar website that has a very good conversion rate with mobile web traffic. Now, just to clarify, referring traffic sources is going to be any website that sends traffic from their domain to cheaptickets.com. So how can we do this with SimilarWeb API? First is to see what Cheap Tickets is. You can see it's a airfare, vacation packages, search platform to find the cheapest fare around. And what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to pull the referrals, their affiliates and their business partners. And then each of those partners, we're going to check out their total visits and the desktop and mobile web traffic split, so we can know which ones are better to target. Now, the end result will look something like this. This is a cutaway of a partial list. We can't show you everything because everything will be a font size of 1. But just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, and I'm going to show you how we got to this. Now, this is the internal tool that I mentioned before. It's our API dashboard. It's based out of Google Sheets. So anyone that's familiar with Excel will have a very easy time using this. Essentially, what this does is it gives you access to an API without needing any technical knowledge whatsoever. You have, and you see at the top left, the different parameters. You can enter the date range you want to look at, the granularity of the output if it's relevant. Here it's not. And the endpoints. Here we have, in this specific tab, referrals and outgoing links. But we have different tabs for different endpoints, something like 30 different endpoints available. We're going to see a few others later down the line.
And Adam, how easy is this to integrate into Excel? Is it just a matter of copying and pasting, and then you can use your typical workflow?
That's exactly what we can do, and we're going to show you one of the use cases later down the line. That's exactly what we're going to do. I like Excel. I mean, I like Google Sheets as well, but doesn't have as many features as Excel, so I always prefer using this to pull the data and then copy paste to Excel, so I have it locally and I can play with it much easier than I can as if it's via Google Sheets. So here what we're going to do, we're going to put cheaptickets.com in the domain column. We're going to set the activation button to on. And we're going to see the top 30 referrals, referring websites. Now, here we're looking at a single website, which you can probably say, hey, it's probably easier to do it in the Pro, and you're right if we're looking at one website. But just to give you an idea of how easy it is to pull additional websites, we can now take the top 30 referring domains and look at their referrals to go further up the chain. So, and you can see here, there are already a few interesting websites, deals.woo, Brad's Deals, which you can probably advertise with as well. Again, we want to look at mobile traffic percentage, but to keep things simple for now, we're just going to look at cheap tickets. But just as you can see the ease of use, you can easily add a number of more websites. So we're going to take that list that we extracted from the dashboard. We're going to put it into Excel.
So that list is, these are the top referrals for cheaptickets.com?
Right. These are the top 30. I think I'm displaying right now about 20, if I remember. And we're going to add additional data to this. Now this is also, I also received this from the dashboard. I'm not going to go through each individual step, but just so you know, it is possible. What I've done here, I've added the category to see what category each of the referring websites are. I pulled the total visits to make sure that it's a website with a significant amount of volume. And I pulled the desktop percentage. And what I do now is I want to sort by mobile web percentage because that's what we wanted to target. So you can see here we have Trivago with 71% mobile traffic with a large amount of visits. That would be maybe something to target. And you can go farther down the line. Again, we're looking here at a single website, but we can easily do this for 30, 40, 100, 1,000 websites.
So our goal here, Adam, was to find potential partners that have strong mobile web traffic.
Correct.
So you've sorted by mobile web traffic to identify the sites that receive the most mobile web traffic, and as we build, let's say in this hypothetical situation, our mobile strategy, these are the sites that we're going to approach and work with.
This would be who we would approach based off looking at a single competitor. And again, you want to ideally look at many different competitors. But essentially, like just to recap what we've done, we pulled the top referrals, we've added the total visits and the desktop and mobile web split, and then we prioritized who we're going to contact based off mobile web traffic share. The next use case we're going to look at is optimizing a conversion funnel ad network. Now, in this case, let's assume an ad network has 50,000 publishers. They want to better connect their advertisers with the relevant audience in order to improve their conversion funnel and KPIs. So how can they do this with SimilarWeb data? We're going to look here at two use cases, two very interesting ones. But to start with, I just want to quickly recap for those that aren't familiar with how an ad network works. Essentially, they act as a medium between advertisers who have products they want to sell, generally through banners, and publishers who have ad space that they want to sell. And an ad network obviously wants to connect a relevant ad to a relevant audience. And that's basically a good ad network does that efficiently. So you have a high click-through, and the users that click on the ads end up purchasing the product. So the first method of how we can do this, and this is taken from an actual use case that was shared to us by one of our clients, we're giving advertisers insights into potential publishers. You can see here if I'm an advertiser and I want to look at a specific website, I can see the visits on the website, their engagement metrics, the time on site, page views, and bounce rate. I can look at the leading countries sending traffic to the website and the traffic sources of that website. So if I have a product that I know sells very well in Germany, I might not want to target a website that has 92% published traffic. If I want to target a website that is very engaged with their users and doesn't have the 90% bounce rate, I would know to look for this and to filter that website out. Essentially, it just helps you target your desired audience. It gives them extra leverage into really optimizing their ad campaign. The second method is more interesting, in my opinion, and this can, again, we're talking about an ad network here, but this can be easily applied to really any field, any industry. What we have here is a sample of some of the 50,000 domains. Here specifically, we're looking at news and media and technology news websites, and we got this, the endpoints we're pulling here is the category endpoint, the visits, visit duration, pages per visit, and bounce rate. And using this information, we're able to create an internal ranking system per category. Now, you can see here the way I've done this is a very rudimentary formula. It's not very complex. But the number one rank that I came up with doesn't have the highest visits. It does have the highest visit duration and pages per view. So users are engaged with that website, so there's a bigger chance they'll see more ads or maybe connect better with the ads. And the third website, tidbits.com, you see they don't have a lot of visits, but they have a very low bounce rate. And again, this is just my own, finger up to the wind, thinking what would be a good ranking system. An ad network would have a much more complex way to do this. But what the use case for this is, you can try to provide value for your advertisers, where if you see that someone is advertising with masterherald.com, which is ranked number 6, you can say, okay, why don't you try advertising with TechBlog or The Professional or Tidbits. Essentially, you do the work for them. Another thing you can do with this, of course, is if let's say you're automating what ads are placed on what site, you can do this can help you decide which websites to place which ads to further increase your KPI and your conversion. So just to recap what we did, we're pulling the visits, engagement metrics, and category. We looked at how to integrate the data into an algorithm, creating an internal ranking system or improving on an existing one, ultimately to better match advertisers with relevant publishers using our data. Okay, now we're getting to a bit more complex use cases. The next two are fairly complex, and I'm going to do a step-by-step walkthrough to make sure we don't lose anyone. Essentially what we're going to be doing here is building a competitors dashboard. We're going to discover direct competitors and sites that are competing for the same traffic as our website that we're going to be using as an example. We're going to track month-over-month visits to identify major increases in traffic. Ultimately, what we want to do is we want to find out the source of that traffic and acquire it for our own domain. So how can we do that? I want to first show you what the final view will look like. And again, this is all using API data. You're going to see throughout the steps, it's going to look like a massive wall of numbers, not very intuitive, but you can easily create this into a graph where it's more pleasing for the eye. Similar to what the Pro does, just we're going to do it through a different step-by-step. Here what we're looking at is we're looking at 15 websites which best match the criteria, which I'm going to get into in a minute. And we're looking at the past 6 months of data to see what has growth and what could be interesting to see how they're getting their traffic. So one thing I didn't touch upon yet, but there's a lot of synergy between the Pro and the API. With the API, you need to know the domains you want to look at. And if you don't know that list, you don't have that list, you can use the Pro to generate the seed list. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to be using cheaptickets.com as an example. And we're going to pretend we don't know any of our competitors. So how can we use the Pro to find that? The first section I'm going to jump to is top sites. Here we can, with top websites, those of you that aren't familiar, you can look at the top up to 10,000 websites in a specific category in a specific country. We're going to be looking at the travel tourism category in the United States. And here we see the top 9,793 websites. For our purposes, we're going to pick the top 2,000 to use to build our seed list. Next.
So Adam, I was just going to say, so for the top sites, so we have actually 245 different industries, and we have 58 different countries that we offer. So we have, if we just roughly estimate, we have 245 industries, 58 countries, 10,000 sites. We're talking about 142 million different websites that we've ranked according to traffic share.
Well, I just chose 2,000, but don't sue me. The next section we're going to use is similar sites. Now this uses SimilarWeb's own internal algorithm to how to best match similar sites using a variety of metrics. We provide here 40 domains that we find to be the most similar, and we're going to use that as well. The next section we're going to look at is organic keyword competitors. We want to see what websites are competing for the same organic keywords as cheaptickets.com. You can see there's a large list, a little bit over 13,000. Again, we're going to take the top 2,000. And the final section with which we're going to build our seed list is the audience interest section. Now this is a really interesting section because essentially what this does is it allows you to see what your users are doing. So if a user is visiting cheaptickets.com, you can see other websites they're visiting in the same browsing section. In the case of cheaptickets.com, you're looking at a travel website for the best deal. Chances are they'll look at other travel websites to see who has the better deal, or a variety of other, local destination websites. There's a lot of interesting information to be gleaned from here. But we're going to take all that information. So if you can recap, we have 2,000 from top sites, 2,000 from organic competitors, 40 from similar sites, and 2,000 from audience interest, 6,040 websites. We're going to take all of that and all that list, put it into Excel, and then we're going to remove duplicates because we're going to be pulling API data for all of these websites, and we don't want to pull for the same website twice. So we're left with 4,071 unique domains to pull data off. So what are we going to do next? We're going to analyze this list. We're going to start with pulling total visits for the past year for each of these domains. Then we're going to calculate month over month and quarter over quarter growth for each domain. But we also want to target websites that have a high growth percentage, but we don't want to target smaller websites. We want to go after the big fish. So we're going to filter websites that have at least 1 million monthly visits in April of 2016. Of course, we can lower this number to make 500,000, 250,000. In this case, we're going with 1 million. And finally, not finally, but second to last, we want to graphically display the past 6 months of traffic for the top 15 websites fitting the above criteria, which goes back to the slide we initially showed. And then, of course, we have this information. What do we do with it? We want to analyze all those websites to find out where they got their traffic from.
So you're saying, Adam, that we're going to be looking at the website's total visits, and total visits is desktop and mobile web combined, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to be looking for sites that had some successful campaign or strategy because we're looking for month over month or quarter over quarter growth. So any website with significant traffic that we've established as more than 1 million and has had some success in the last year, we'll be taking a look at.
Correct. We want to see how they improved, what their exact sources are, and maybe we can take it for ourselves. So to start with, I'm jumping back to the dashboard, and this is another tab that looks at total visits and total engagement, which is pages per visit, visit duration, and bounce rate. You can see at the top left the parameters section. I'm looking at April 2015 to April 2016. I'm looking at a monthly granularity. I can also choose weekly or daily. I'm pulling total visits for the entire world. And just to give you an idea of how easy this is, all I did was copy and paste the list into the highlighted column, turn the activation button on, and I got the data. Now, it wasn't that fast. It probably took about maybe 8 minutes to pull data for all 4,000 websites, but it's certainly a lot faster than doing it manually in the Pro. So I'm going to take that data, and like you mentioned before, Dan, I'm going to throw it into an Excel sheet. I prefer Excel. What we're going to do next is we're going to calculate month-over-month growth as well as quarter-over-quarter growth for each domain. So we're going to do that with a simple formula. And following that, we're going to sort the domains.
Are we looking at the last month? Which month over month and which quarter over quarter are we looking at?
Month over month, we're looking at April compared to March.
Okay.
Now, quarter over quarter, I understand can be a little misleading because we don't have a full quarter to work with. Quarter over quarter, in this case, is looking at February, March, and April compared to November, December, and January. Basically, last 3 months versus the previous 3 months.
Great.
So now we're going to sort that list by month over month. We want to, again, like I said, we want to target whoever has the highest growth, as well as filter out any websites that have less than 1 million visits in the month of April. Now, this is a large list. There can be a lot of websites here that may not be relevant. We want to filter this further to find relevant websites. So what we're going to do, I'm not going to take you step by step here, but just to explain, I'm going to take this entire list of domains, put it back into the dashboard to extract category, and I'm going to take the category and put it back here, and then filter by travel. Now, that doesn't mean that only the travel industry is relevant here, but for this specific case, I'm looking here at the travel industry. What I want to do now is I want to further filter this list down by any domain that has at least a month-over-month growth of 10% or a quarter-over-quarter growth of 10%. And this is my final list. There's more to this list. I just decided to choose what I think would be the more relevant websites. And using this, I can go to Excel, create a pivot chart, and I have this final view that I made before. It's a lot nicer to look at than a wall of numbers. And you can see some really interesting trends. Just to give you a few examples, Despegar.com had a big spike in April. JustFly in the last quarter, they've been really increasing and steadily increasing. Every website here has something interesting and is worth looking into. Now, we don't have time to look into each one, so we're going to choose JustFly as an example to see why their traffic increased. So let's dive a bit deeper. First is to look who JustFly is. They're, from what you can see, they find cheap flights, hotels, pretty much a direct competitor of cheaptickets.com. Now, for this next section, we're going to look at the Pro, just for ease of use. If you're looking at one or two websites, it's definitely better to go to the Pro. And again, this goes back to the synergy between the Pro and the API. You can really come full circle. You used the Pro to generate a list. You use the API to filter that big list down. And now you have a smaller list of relevant websites. You can jump to the Pro and look at each one. Now, if you're looking at maybe like 10 websites, okay, it would make sense to go to the Pro for each one, just because you have a nicer UI and there's less work as far as extracting data and making charts. But if you have a list of 200 websites, you can pull all this data from the API, just to make that point clear. So back to JustFly.com. We're looking at the traffic sources from the past 6 months, broken down by traffic source. And you can see we have direct, mail, referral, social, organic and paid search, and display ads. Now, immediately there are two traffic sources that stand out as being, as you see, having a high increase. One is the direct traffic source, which there isn't really much we can do about that. That's a user that would go into their address bar and directly type in justfly.com. The second source, which is more interesting, is referrals. You can see they had a big jump between February and March. So we're going to go see what happened during those months. So we're going to jump into the Pro, and we're going to look at March specifically. We're going to see the change percent that happened, and the change percent is looking at what changed between March and February. And you can see a few websites started sending a lot more traffic. Cheapflights.com had a 600% increase. Now, because cheap flights and cheap tickets have the same beginning to their domain, there's a good chance they're related.
Adam, what's the change? Are we looking at last month over month?
Yeah, so this is essentially month over month for this specific domain as it relates to referral traffic sent to justfly.com.
So the amount of traffic that cheapflights.com sent to justfly.com increased by 621% just in the last month.
Correct. You can see they have about a quarter of the 580,000 is just from cheapflights.com. The month before that, it was a lot less. That's what really had a big growth. But you can look, skip.flights is a relevant competitor, which is worth looking into. 15% of JustFly's referral traffic is from Skip Flights, and they grew 121% between those 2 months. So that's something to look into, potentially partnering with them, just as an example. And again, this is looking at a single domain from that big list of domains we came across. So there's a lot of information to be gained here. And it's important to highlight that what we did here is we took a large amount of domains and we found a high number of websites that have potential relevant traffic sources that we can acquire for ourselves. The last section, the last use case we're going to look at is organic keyword research. Now here we're going to discover organic keywords used by competitors. We're going to understand the volume sent to the competitors for their top 50 keywords. And like before, we're going to look at the month-over-month change in keyword volume. And we're looking here at organic keyword research. We can just as easily do this with paid keyword research. But the ultimate goal of doing this is to see, okay, what keywords should we be targeting? So to start with, we're going to go back to cheaptickets.com. We're going to generate a seed list using our top 150 organic competitors. This is the same section we used in the previous use case. We're going to pull traffic sources to see each of those domains' organic search volume for March and for April of 2016. For each of those domains, we're going to pull the top 50 organic keywords. Then we're going to calculate volume per keyword for each domain. And finally, we're going to aggregate the volume per keyword. And that may sound a little complex now, but we're going to do it step by step, so hopefully it will become clearer.
And Adam, what are we looking to achieve with this?
We're looking to see what keywords are trending. We're looking to see if there was, let's say, in the month of April, we're going to see Machu Picchu had 3,000 visits, and in the month of March, Machu Picchu had 3,000 visits, and in April it had 28,000 visits. that's a keyword we might want to target. That's a keyword that's growing significantly. And again, it's important to note here we're looking at only the top 50 keywords. So it doesn't mean that Machu Picchu only sent 3,000 visits in March between all these websites, but there might have been keyword number 51 or 65 or 1,000 that we're not going to pick up on. We can also target, instead of the top 50, the top 1,000 keywords. For this use case, I chose the top 50. So jumping back to the Pro, we're going to look at cheaptickets.com's organic competitors.
And Adam, what are organic competitors? What does that mean?
Organic competitors, you can see the affinity score over here. This is how closely they target the same keywords. So I think here this looks like about 20% of cheap flights. So it means that they're targeting a lot of the same keywords that cheap tickets is targeting. And it's, of course, it's a descending order. So you take the top 150, chances are you're going to find a lot of domains that are targeting the same keywords as you are.
So the same organic keywords that drive traffic to cheap tickets are also driving traffic to cheap flights and One Travel and Cheapo Air, etc. So we know that the same organic keywords are actually distributing their market share across these websites.
Correct. So what we're going to do here, again, I'm going to use the dashboard to pull this. I'm not going to go through step by step. But we are going to look at the final data as it would appear in Excel. Now, it looks like a mess, and you can't really gain any insights from the way this is formatted, but we're going to use some Excel magic to format it afterwards. Essentially, what we're looking at here, we're looking at a domain. We're looking at the amount of organic search that this domain received, and then we're looking at the top 50 keywords, and you can see each keyword is sending a percentage. So TripAdvisor is sending 27% of 50 million. Restaurants Near Me is sending 0.7% of the 50 million. What we're going to do next, of course, is instead of having percentage, we're going to have volume. That's more interesting to us.
Sure. So the organic volume that we're looking at, I guess what's really cool about this metric and how it differs from, let's say, Google Keyword Planner or some of our other tools out there that provide search volume is that this is not the search volume for people looking at these keywords. It's actually the search volume for people that search, they make search queries and actually arrive to the website. So that's a huge difference. We're not just seeing what people look for, but we're seeing the intent of people looking and actually visiting these websites. So we can see, Adam, the real volume of visits according to these keywords. Is that correct?
Correct. 100% correct. Okay, so this particular table is looking at March's data. We're going to pull an identical chart for April's data, and we're going to format this into a format that is easy to make a pivot table out of. So we're going to convert this whole big mess into this. And here what we're looking at, we have a column with date. We're going to have all of March data. We're going to have a domain, the domain column, and each of the domain's 50 keywords. We're going to have 50 keywords as well as their volume, and then Kayak's 50 keywords and Kayak's volume, Expedia, and so on and so forth until we finish March. And we're going to continue again with April, the same story, until we end up having 15,000 rows of data.
So we are looking at 150 different websites, and for those 150 websites, the top 50 keywords. And for each of those 150 websites, we're analyzing 2 months of data. Is that correct? March and April.
Correct. So here you can do, like, just to give an example of how we see 15,000 rows, 150 competitors, 50 keywords each is 7,500 times 2 for 2 months. So we have 15,000 rows of data. But now we want to do, this is nice, but we're not going to sift through 15,000 rows of data. We're going to aggregate volume per keyword via pivot table. So here we can see March volume and April volume per keyword. We can also add here, which I didn't add, is to see how many competitors are competing over a specific keyword. Restaurants Near Me, for example, might have 4 different competitors competing over it. Expedia might have 7 competitors competing over it. But we're not done. This is nice, but we want to now add a few more metrics to this. We want to look at month-over-month change. We want to filter April volume to have at least 10,000. We want to target keywords that have like a significant volume to make it worth targeting. And then we want to sort month-over-month change. Of course, you want the highest growth over the lowest, and you want to find interesting keywords. So we've done that here. And you can see that there, some keywords have 800% growth, 200%, and onwards down the line. And just from this little snapshot here, I found a few very interesting keywords. You can see things to do in Toronto had a growth from 3,000 in March to 28,000. Machu Picchu, best places to visit in Europe. Now, it's important to remember we're looking here at a travel website, so there are going to be seasonal changes, but this is just as applicable to any industry. You'll see a growth in specific keywords, so you'll know what to target. And again, we're looking here at 2 months of data. We can easily pull the same thing for the entire year, especially when you have seasonal changes. Like, for example, if I was cheaptickets.com now, I might want to look at June's keywords just to see what I can expect or July's keywords. What can I expect will be trending in the next month, so I can start targeting that now.
So what we're doing is looking at past keywords that had a huge rise in traffic. And for a travel website, maybe we would be taking a look at some of our closest competitors, but to analyze 150 websites and be able to discover some of these gems, be able to discover some of these organic keywords that are suddenly driving traffic. And also you mentioned if we want to look historically at June or July of 2015, we could do the same to see what was successful in driving organic traffic. So we see some of these keywords drove 400, 800% traffic. These would be amazing if we were in the travel industry to implement, to publish some content, and to focus on driving traffic to our website using these keywords.
Correct. And just to give you an idea of how long this took me to create, this took me about half an hour to do. Very simple, and the majority of the time was figuring out a way how to format the table into a usable format for pivot. It's very quick to be done.
Great. All right, great. So we have a few questions now that we're going to get into, and again, feel free to continue to ask questions. So the first question that we have is, Adam, how do we get access to the dashboard?
Okay, the dashboard is actually an internal tool that we created. It was meant, like I mentioned earlier, I think I mentioned earlier, to give users who don't have the technical knowledge or resources to create their own scripts to use our API, to use it without any real knowledge. It's meant to provide ease of use, and it's available to anybody who has the API. You can jump right into the dashboard. If you have an account manager, you can demo it for you, show you how it works. It's very intuitive. There really isn't much any mistakes to be made. I created it to be easy to use. So really it's available to anybody.
Okay, and if someone was a developer, how much time do you think it would take for them to implement? How easy is it to use the code to build some of these things that you showed?
Well, our API is built off a URL structure. Just like visiting a website, you have the URL and you have the different parameters you enter. I think any programmer be able to do it relatively quick. Like, I'm not a programmer. I picked up JavaScript, which is what the dashboard is based off of, by myself, and I was able to pick it up fairly quickly. It's pretty intuitive. So I don't think it would take a lot of time for a developer to go about creating their own script to pull this data. It's just a question like any company, resources and time.
Okay, thanks, Adam. So the next question I have is, can you explain a way to use the API to detect fraudulent websites?
Sure. This is actually an interesting question. I actually had a call with a customer about a month ago. They were a security company looking to track, I think, about 100,000 domains once per month to see what looked fishy. Essentially, like, it really depends on how you define what fraud is and what it isn't. I can use their use case as an example. Essentially, what I recommended they do, and they ultimately did, of course, purchase it, and they are using it effectively, is to pull traffic sources for each domain. What you can do with that is you'll see the breakdown of direct traffic, referral traffic, search, mail, direct. I think I mentioned direct. And you can track any major deviations in that. So if you have, let's say, on average, 40% of your traffic comes from referrals, and the next month 99% comes from referrals, you know something's up there. Another endpoint they use is looking at average time on site and bounce rate. If the average time on site for a website of that category is, let's say, 30 seconds to a minute, and their bounce rate is 70%, if they suddenly see the average time on site is now 5 seconds, and the bounce rate is 90-something%, then that's fishy. And again, you can pull that data on a ton of websites very quickly, so action can be taken very quickly as far as to take action against those fraudulent websites.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. Next question from John Rufus. Can you throw some light onto the insights that we get out of slide 64? So how can we identify which keywords are being competed most by competitors?
Okay, well, this goes back to what I mentioned a few slides ago. I didn't... 64. That would be this slide. How do I repeat the question then?
So John is asking, how can I identify which keywords are being competed most by competitors?
Well, like I mentioned earlier in the slide, I can add an additional column here that'll give me the count of domains that are competing or receiving traffic for this keyword. So TripAdvisor, for example, might have all the TripAdvisors, TripAdvisor.com, co.uk. You might have like 7 different domains competing for this keyword, whereas restaurants near me might only have 2 domains competing for that. So you can, again, I didn't add it here. I didn't want to have an overload of data, but this is already available in the data we have. It's just a matter of adding an additional column to the pivot table.
So I guess what we could do is we could start using we could also start by using SimilarWeb Pro. We can look at the keyword competitors. So we'll look at any website, find out which sites compete for the same organic traffic, and then from there we can identify the keywords that are being competed by just pulling out a list of their keywords and analyzing which of the keywords have overlap and how much traffic they're bringing.
Exactly, and it's important to remember here, we're only looking at 150 domains, and we're only looking at the top 50 keywords. We can look at the top 2,000 organic competitors and the top 1,000 keywords, and we'll probably notice a lot more overlap. But this is just to give you an idea of what you can do with the API.
Great. Next question is from Giuliano. Where can I find the API documentation?
Okay, any salesperson or account manager can send you the relevant documentation. It's something that I put together. It's very straightforward. Essentially, any documentation you receive has the endpoint, the amount of hits each call will cost, a description of the endpoint, the date range available on the endpoint. Some endpoints you can pull 25 months of data, some you can pull only a few months of data. And then you have at the very end the URL structure, which includes all of the parameters you need to pull the data. So you'll have, let's say, for mobile web visits, you'll have the structure of mobile web. It'll notify you where to enter the domain you want to pull data for, and then all the parameters, the variables. You'll have the user key, the start date, the end date, whether you want to look at the main domain only or include subdomains, granularity where it's relevant, and so on. It's very straightforward, the guidelines.
Great. Next question. Can the dashboard split the category string into category and subcategory as separate columns?
The dashboard in its current form cannot do that, but you can use a simple Excel function to do that. I believe it's equals left, and then you choose the what's it called, the column or the field you want to do, and anytime you'll see the slash, for example, every category and subcategories is separated by a slash, you'll basically split it up into 2 different cells. It can be done with Excel, but the output is received in the current form.
So if you're using the dashboard, you can just copy paste into Excel and run a quick formula, or if you're using the raw format using JSON or XML, you can actually just do that quite simply, I assume, in the code. So.
Yeah. It's all doable. You can even do it in the dashboard, but again, I prefer Excel, but it's easy to split. You just have a simple Excel formula. You'd have, let's say, a list of 1,000 categories. You can create the Excel formula for the specific field, and then just drag it down, and you'll have the split done for you.
Sure. Great. So next question is, does the API offer any demographic data of websites, such as traffic by age or et cetera? So I'll actually answer that. We offer the audience interests, which Adam touched on briefly, which is actually showing you which websites users navigate to in the same browsing session. So if they're browsing and opening up new tabs or windows, we can actually show you those websites. And while we are working on adding demographics such as age and gender, etc., audience interest for our customers, they love this data because it's more, it's actually showing you a different layer. When we know exactly who your customers are, which websites, if they're looking at Mercedes or are they looking at Honda, you can know exactly which type of users are looking at your website or your competitors' websites by knowing exactly the various industries and websites that they're looking at. And this can also be really cool if you're doing retargeting campaigns. As opposed to knowing a very broad, let's say, age group, you can actually know exactly what are the websites that your customers are navigating to and target these users. Perfect. We have another question here. So two questions that are sort of the same. Do I need to have SimilarWeb Pro? And can you talk a bit about the pricing? So the API is not part of the free version. It is part of our paid version, and we would be happy to work with you guys on building a custom-made solution that fits your needs. We have various sizes of API, from small up to very, very large, depending on use cases. But this is part of the paid product, and we would be very happy to go into more detail and, again, build a very customized solution according to your needs. Great. So I guess the last question for you, Adam, is how can, or is there a limit to the amount of data that I can pull using the API?
Okay, well, it kind of depends what you mean here, so I'll answer both ways that I can interpret that question. Is there a limit to the amount of data you can pull? Well, if you want to take it from an angle of how much data can I pull per endpoint, like I mentioned before, each endpoint has a certain number of months you can pull data for. For example, mobile web, you can pull 17 months of data. For desktop, you can pull 25 months of data. So it really depends per endpoint. As far as the amount of data you can pull, meaning let's say I want to pull 1 million websites, there really is no limitation as to how much you can pull. We have some clients which are venture capitalists which make over, I believe it's like 3 or 4 million hits per month. We don't really have an upper limitation. If you want to pull like 100 million calls in a day, yeah, there might be some kind of limitation involved there, but that generally doesn't, I haven't seen that yet. So for general needs, there is no limitation. It's just a question of how much data you want to pull.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. So again, we will be, thanks everybody so much for joining. It's been really fun. And the API is one of our most exciting features. Our customers love it, and it helps customers save time and qualify and discover and decide and deploy your marketing strategy. So we will be sending, again, the recording of this webinar, as well as the deck that Adam has been using. So we'll be able to send all of that information to you guys, and we'll be happy to discuss further. Just feel free to reach out to this email address. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a great day.
Take care.